Cabinet Secretary, what did Carwyn Jones tell you when you asked him whether you could raise tuition fees?
The decision to link tuition fees to inflation was taken by the entire Cabinet in recognition of a number of factors that I had to take into consideration. Those factors being the ones that I outlined to you, Llwyr, in November of last year, when you raised this issue then.
Of course, Lord Adonis, Labour's architect of tuition fees, has admitted that they've turned into a Frankenstein's monster of £50,000 plus debts for graduates on modest salaries who can't remotely afford to pay them back. Many of those students are clearly on the brink. What do you think is an acceptable level of debt for students in Wales?
The issue of how we fund students through their higher education has to take into consideration the principles of access to that education and the ability to sustain it. You will be very well aware at Llwyr that the NUS, through their Pound in the Pocket campaign, have stressed that it is living costs and not fees that is a barrier for people from lower incomes going on into higher education. That is a view that was signed up to in the Diamond Review, of which I understand Plaid Cymru did have a representative and was able to feed fully into that review. They said then that that was the issue that needed to be addressed. I'm very well aware that these are difficult and challenging issues, as are you, Llwyr, very well aware that these are difficult and challenging issues, because as you said in this chamber in November, there is a risk that the funding gap between institutions in England and Wales will only widen. And there's a possible perception, that the quality of courses in Wales, that because they are cheaper, are not as good. You then went on to say, Llwyr, that if fees went up in England, which they have done, it would be difficult to see how you could withstand the same move in Wales in many ways. You understand the difficulty our sector is facing, and you should acknowledge that here in the chamber.
Well, piling the pressure on the students isn't the answer, is it? And trying to make it sound as if the NUS is supporting the increase in the fee that was announced yesterday is plain wrong. Yes, there's a shift in how you support students. Nobody's doubting that. But raising the burden of debt that students in Wales are suffering, and you didn't answer my question, by the way, is not an acceptable answer in my book. Now, I thought that the Liberal Democrats and Labour, in terms of their principle, was to move towards a free education. Your decision has taken us further away from that than ever before. So can you confirm that the original principle that you and others on the government's bench once held so dear is still in place?
We were on the same NUS Wales committee.
Of course, in an ideal world, education at all levels should be free. But I don't live in that ideal world. I live in a world where people from poorer backgrounds can't access higher education because they cannot afford to pay for their accommodation or their books or their food. So what we have done is fundamentally shift in line with the recommendations of the Diamond Review, of which Plaid Cymru were a part of and signed up to. We have moved the way in which we support our students so that we can ensure that those from the poorest background will have the equivalent of a living wage, that average Welsh students will have a non-repayable grant of £7,000 a year. And that is in stark contrast, Llwyr, to your party that has promised nothing on upfront costs, promised nothing on the day-to-day living costs of this country. And we have gone further than that because we will ensure that this is available for part-time students and postgraduate students. Again, if Plaid Cymru were in charge, there would be loans for postgraduate students and no grants. We are delivering grants.